What if pain really is all in your head? In The Divided Mind, John E. Sarno details his pioneering theory that many cases of chronic pain, such as back pain, neck pain, migraines, and repetitive stress injuries, are caused by the mind's tendency to create physical symptoms in response to repressed emotional trauma or stress. Many of Sarno's patients report that this approach helped them find relief when mainstream medicine failed. Sarno, 1923 to 2017, was a practicing physician but was best known for his best-selling books, including The Divided Mind, published in 2006, which explain his holistic approach to pain management, encompassing both physical and psychological causes. Sarno earned his M.D. from Columbia University in 1950. He then served as an attending physician at the Rusk Institute of Rehabilitation Medicine at New York University Medical Center, where he's said to have treated over 11,000 pain patients and cured 90% of them. This guide starts by explaining Sarno's theory of how and why your brain can produce symptoms in the rest of your body through the mind-body connection. We'll then discuss Tension Myositis Syndrome, the term Sarno coined to describe this phenomenon, as well as his method for treating it. Finally, we'll explore the contributions that other doctors made to The Divided Mind, which described their own experiences learning about and treating tension myositis syndrome. Our commentary will examine the scientific backing, or lack thereof, for Sarno's theories, as well as draw connections to common self-help principles that echo his approach of treating physical symptoms with mental and emotional care. We'll also provide actionables that you can do without the help of a medical professional so you can see if such self-care practices benefit you. The mind and body connection. Sarno begins by saying that many painful medical conditions are psychogenic, meaning created by the mind. He refers to such conditions as mind-body disorders, emphasizing that they are mental as well as physical. Short-form note. You'll also see these conditions referred to as psychosomatic, which means the same thing. Psycho refers to the mind, and somatic refers to the body. According to Sarno, these disorders exist because of the deep connection between your mind and your body. In simple terms, your mental health and physical health are intrinsically linked. Therefore, if one suffers, the other will too. Short-form note. Sarno's assertion that there's a connection between your mind and your body is not a new idea. For example, mindfulness practitioners teach that every emotion creates certain physical responses, like how anger makes you tense your muscles and joy causes you to smile. In many cases, by carefully observing what your body is doing at a particular moment, you can identify thoughts and feelings that you weren't consciously aware of. Also, the mind-body connection works both ways, meaning you can also change your emotions, to an extent, through physical actions. For instance, you can genuinely improve your mood by faking laughter. In this section, we'll discuss Sarno's theory of how mind-body disorders develop, and how Sigmund Freud's ideas laid the foundation for Sarno's work today. How mind-body disorders develop. According to Sarno, repressed stress and unconscious emotional factors like anger, anxiety, or trauma can lead to physical symptoms through the following process. First, the mind tries to repress or suppress deep-seated emotional issues and stressors that are difficult to face consciously, which creates a state of unconscious emotional tension. In fact, that's why Sarno titled this book The Divided Mind. He says that mind-body disorders originate from the conscious and unconscious parts of your mind working against each other. To distract from this underlying tension, the brain produces physiological symptoms. For example, reduced blood flow, oxygen deprivation, or muscle spasms. These physiological changes manifest as pain, headaches, gastrointestinal problems, fatigue, and other symptoms. Short-form note. Psychosomatic symptoms are recognized and fairly common, believed to affect anywhere from 5% to 7% of the population. They also appear more frequently in people with stressful or unstable lifestyles, as well as people with psychological conditions like depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, the wider medical community doesn't share Sarno's certainty about how and why psychosomatic disorders happen. There's currently no scientific consensus about precisely how mental stress turns into physical symptoms. According to Sarno, when you suffer from these symptoms and seek medical help, you're usually diagnosed with some kind of physical illness and treated accordingly. However, since the root cause is psychological, Such treatment doesn't solve the underlying problem, and the symptoms inevitably come back. Therefore, Sarno criticizes contemporary medicine for overemphasizing physical abnormalities as the root causes of pain. He argues that neglecting people's underlying psychology often leads to unnecessary medical treatments and surgeries, which could be avoided with a better understanding of mind-body disorders. Short-form note: aside from failing to help patients in need, unnecessary medical procedures are an enormous economic drain, especially in the United States where Sarno practiced. A 2019 study concluded that about a quarter of U.S. healthcare spending could be considered wasteful, accounting for an estimated $760 billion to $935 billion annually. Of that, anywhere from $76 billion to $101 billion per year is due to low-value care, meaning unneeded treatments that either don't help or, in some cases, cause further harm to the patient. The Freudian roots of mind-body theory. Hysterical disorders. Sarno credits Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, as one of the earliest thinkers to recognize the connection between the mind and physical symptoms that had no discernible structural or biological cause. Freud believed that many of his patients' complaints like paralysis, pain, and sensory loss were actually conversion symptoms, meaning psychological distress converted into physical symptoms. He labeled these conditions as hysterical disorders, and theorized that they stemmed from subconscious psychological conflicts and repressed emotions. Short-form note: though he may have been the first to connect it to physical symptoms, Freud didn't coin the term hysterical disorder. In fact, the word hysteria appears in medical texts dating back to the early 19th century, describing a neurotic condition that was believed to be unique to women. It comes from the Greek hystera, meaning womb. However, by the mid-19th century the definition of hysteria had broadened to mean a sense of overexcitement, losing its gendered subtext. In Freud's work, Sarno saw parallels with his own theory of how repressed emotions can unconsciously trigger physiological changes and pain. He built upon Freud's early insights about psychosomatic disorders and applied them specifically to chronic pain issues like back problems, migraines, and repetitive strain injuries. This culminated in Sarno's concept of Tension Myositis Syndrome, which we'll discuss in the next section. Tension Myositis Syndrome. Sarno coined the term Tension Myositis Syndrome, TMS, to describe the condition he believes is actually behind many chronic pain disorders, which are often diagnosed as purely physical problems. Tension refers to the muscle tension and blood vessel constriction that the brain triggers in specific areas of the body, causing decreased oxygen flow to those areas. Myositis means muscle inflammation, which is one of the most common causes of chronic pain. Short-form note: Tension myositis syndrome is also known as tension myoneural syndrome. Myoneural refers to both muscles and nerves, and therefore this term emphasizes the nervous system's role in producing the symptoms. To be more specific, Sarno's theory of TMS involves the autonomic nervous system, which controls unconscious processes like your heartbeat, breathing, and digestion, all of which can be affected by the mind-body disorders that Sarno describes. How Sarno treats TMS. Sarno says that his treatment for TMS focuses on helping patients become aware of repressed feelings like anger, anxiety, or guilt and process those feelings in a healthy way. He then outlines his specific approach to treating TMS as well as other disorders, such as fibromyalgia, that, according to Sarno, may be psychosomatic. Self-awareness and psychological help. First of all, Sarno emphasizes the need to educate patients about how the mind can create real physical symptoms as a way to mask emotional issues. He then instructs each patient to keep a journal and to write down any recurring thoughts, powerful emotions, or sudden insights that they experience, paying special attention to thoughts related to anger and other negative feelings. Through this journaling process, Sarno's patients work to build self-awareness and pinpoint any significant sources of emotional tension, anxiety, or trauma that may be contributing to their physical symptoms. Once uncovered, the patients must actively face and work through those repressed thoughts and feelings. This step often involves psychological counseling and therapy. Remember, Sarno's patients have been repressing their emotions because they were too much to handle. They often need professional guidance and support to help them finally resolve those negative feelings. Short-form note: Keeping a journal can be an effective way to get in touch with your inner thoughts and feelings. A variation of the journaling that Sarno describes is called writing therapy, which differs from regular journaling in 3 key ways. First, while journaling generally means just jotting down your thoughts, writing therapy focuses on answering specific questions or completing certain exercises. Second, writing therapy seeks to analyze the person's reactions to events and their approaches to solving problems. Finally, while a journal is generally assumed to be private, writing therapy is usually guided by a mental health professional. They'll ensure that the journaling is helpful and that the patient doesn't get overwhelmed by the thoughts and feelings they uncover. Finally, Sarno encourages his patients to resume normal physical activity as much as possible, using their newfound understanding of mind-body disorders to overcome their fears of causing themselves more pain. He also frequently teaches psychological techniques, such as positive affirmations, to help patients rebuild the relationship between their mind and their body. For instance, they might start each day by looking in the mirror and saying, "I am not injured, I am not broken, I am healthy and strong." By proving their physical capability to themselves and reinforcing it with psychological techniques, patients can overcome their mind-body disorders. Short-form note: ignoring pain, or the fear of pain, is both difficult and potentially dangerous. This is because pain is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. It warns you when something is wrong, such as an injury, and teaches you to avoid dangerous situations like touching sharp objects. Therefore, it's crucial to first get a diagnosis so you can be certain that your pain really is psychosomatic. However, if you do find that you need to overcome pain or fear of pain, Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, offers some insight. Pain alone is not harmful to you, and therefore you can endure it if you must. Pain is only a warning. If it's a false alarm, so to speak, then there's no actual danger in continuing an activity that causes pain. Contributions from other doctors. The second half of The Divided Mind consists of a series of essays by other doctors about their experiences with mind-body disorders. This includes learning about them, treating them, and in some cases, recovering from such disorders themselves. High blood pressure as a mind-body disorder. Samuel J. Mann teaches clinical medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College and treats patients at New York Presbyterian Hospital. He specializes in treating hypertension and is particularly interested in the connection between repressed emotions and hypertension. Most people believe that constantly feeling stressed raises the risk of developing high blood pressure. However, Mann argues that research and treatments focusing on feelings of stress have failed to support this theory. The link between stress and hypertension remains tenuous, and stress reduction techniques don't reliably reduce blood pressure. Short-form note: there is a known connection between stress and high blood pressure, but Mann is correct that it's tenuous. The American Heart Association, AHA, says that the direct link between stress and hypertension is still being studied. However, the AHA also notes that there's a clear indirect link, because stress often leads people to do things that contribute to high blood pressure. For instance, people who are feeling stressed tend to neglect their physical health, eat unhealthy foods, and overuse alcohol and other drugs. In contrast to that common belief, Mann says that repressed emotions, the stresses people don't feel, are the real link between stress and high blood pressure. He writes that keeping upsetting feelings at bay requires the sympathetic nervous system, SNS, to stay constantly active. The SNS controls the body's threat response, part of which is to increase heart rate and blood pressure. In the short term, this ensures that the body's muscles are well supplied with oxygen, so they're ready to fight or to run at a moment's notice. However, if the SNS is always engaged, then the person's blood pressure is constantly elevated. In other words, they have hypertension. Therefore, uncovering repressed emotions and helping the patient to resolve them is an effective way to treat high blood pressure, much more so than stress reduction techniques like muscle relaxation and deep breathing exercises. Alternatively, drugs that interfere with the SNS's ability to affect blood pressure also show promising results in treating this type of hypertension. Treating hypertension with cognitive behavioral therapy. Recent research suggests Mann is correct that psychological therapy, helping people to find and deal with the root causes of their stress, is an effective way to reduce blood pressure, though it's not clear exactly how much of a role repressed emotions play in this process. For example, a 2021 study examining the results from different reports suggests that cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is a type of talk therapy, often helps people with high blood pressure improve their health. The researchers didn't directly link CBT with lower blood pressure, but noted that it helped treat many different conditions that can cause high blood pressure, such as anxiety and depression. The talk therapy also helped patients on blood pressure medications to follow their treatment plans more closely, which naturally made the drugs work more effectively. Interestingly, the study also found that CBT patients saw improvements in their cholesterol levels, which the researchers did not link to a secondary cause. Instead, they believe this is because CBT helps to calm the SNS, which controls the body's threat response. An overactive SNS leads to high cholesterol along with many other harmful conditions. Joint and back pain as mind-body disorders. Andrea Leonard-Siegel is a rheumatologist and a clinical associate professor of medicine at George Washington University. She specializes in treating chronic pain and takes a holistic approach that addresses both physical and psychological causes of pain. When Leonard-Siegel herself developed back pain that didn't go away with standard treatments, she went to Sarno as a patient. That was when she learned about mind-body disorders and the psychological causes of pain. Sarno's treatment cured her, and she's been using his principles of mind-body medicine in her practice ever since, with a particular focus on treating TMS. TMS patients think they should be in pain. Leonard-Siegel says that the only common thread between many of her patients is the belief that they've seriously hurt themselves. Their injuries, if they have any, are often minor and would normally heal on their own. However, because the patient thinks they're hurt, the pain continues. Furthermore, the mind-body disorder often compounds itself because the patient comes to believe that the chronic pain means they're frail and weak. As a result of that belief, they actually start to feel even minor pains more severely and struggle to recover from injuries and illnesses that should pose no threat at all. Leonard-Siegel's treatment for TMS is similar to Sarno's, but she adds that her goal is to give her patients the benefit of an outside perspective. In other words, Leonard-Siegel helps her patients to see themselves as she sees them, healthy, strong, and capable. She says that, once her patients internalize that new self-image, they usually make full recoveries. Mind-body disorders as identity disorders. Leonard-Siegel takes a different approach to mind-body disorders. Rather than saying that they're the result of repressed emotions, she posits that such disorders often come from the patient's self-image. This idea reflects what life coach Tony Robbins writes about identity in his book Awaken the Giant Within. Robbins's definition of identity is the person you believe yourself to be, matching Leonard-Siegel's definition of self-image. Robbins adds that your identity doesn't actually define who you are, but rather what you do. You subconsciously act in ways that align with your identity, impacting your decisions and actions. For instance, if you see yourself as an injured person with chronic pain, you'll think and act like an injured person with chronic pain. Furthermore, you'll naturally resist changing things that you see as core parts of your identity, because that feels like losing a part of yourself, even though it's really only changing your perception of yourself. Robbins suggests bypassing that defense mechanism by subtly shifting your identity or building upon it, rather than totally changing how you see yourself. Continuing the previous example, you might stop telling yourself that you are injured and shift to telling yourself that you were injured but have now recovered. This approach allows you to grow past your old identity without needing to reject it outright. Diagnosing physical versus psychosomatic disorders. Douglas Hoffman is an orthopedist with decades of experience in sports medicine. He takes a particular interest in how psychological and social factors lead to mind-body disorders in otherwise healthy people. Hoffman makes two important observations about mind-body disorders. 1. Even when a condition is psychosomatic, it often has a physical trigger. For example, someone who twisted their ankle while running might still feel pain in that ankle years later. This makes it difficult to diagnose a mind-body disorder because it seems obvious that the cause is physical. In this case, the ankle must not have healed properly. Short-form note. Although we've been discussing repressed emotions so far, some experts say that repressing physical sensations, like the pain from an injury, can also lead to psychosomatic symptoms. This helps to explain why some people continue to feel pain long after their injuries have healed. For example, in The Body Keeps the Score, psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk writes that trauma survivors often experience intense flashbacks that include physical sensations, meaning they aren't just remembering their past trauma, they're re-experiencing it with all of their senses. To escape this pattern of reliving their trauma, they often try to suppress those physical sensations, leading to psychosomatic symptoms just like Sarno describes in The Divided Mind. 2. Physiological conditions and psychosomatic conditions aren't a simple binary, but instead exist on a spectrum. In other words, chronic conditions often have both physical and psychological causes. Therefore, the doctor must determine on a case-by-case basis how much the patient's psychology is contributing to their condition. Short-form note: no matter where someone's condition falls on this physiological psychosomatic spectrum, a psychologist can be an invaluable part of their treatment plan. For one thing, a mental health professional can help the patient overcome unhelpful thought patterns about chronic pain, such as overstating how much the pain interferes with their life or living in fear of their next pain flare-up, thereby helping them resume a more normal life. However, recent research also suggests that a person's mental state changes how they experience pain. For instance, someone who's sad, anxious, or frustrated will feel pain more intensely. Therefore, therapy doesn't just help patients cope with pain, it can actually lessen the pain itself. Hoffman says that the best way to diagnose a patient is to get a thorough history and conduct a complete physical exam. From there, the doctor can create a differential diagnosis, a list of conditions, both physical and psychosomatic, that could explain the patient's symptoms. The patient's medical history is crucial because it will include psychological conditions such as depression and anxiety that would make psychosomatic disorders more likely. It will also note if they've ever been diagnosed with a psychosomatic condition before. Hoffman adds that traditional treatments for pain like painkillers and physical therapy reinforce the idea that there's something wrong with the patient's body. This makes it harder for them to recover from their mind-body disorder. Therefore, it's crucial to identify whether the patient's condition is physical or psychosomatic because the wrong treatment plan could prevent their recovery or make their condition worse. The harm of misdiagnosis. Misdiagnosis, incorrectly identifying a patient's condition, is a widespread and costly problem in healthcare. For instance, a 2023 study estimated that there could be as many as 50 million to 100 million cases of misdiagnosis each year in the U.S. alone. Most of those misdiagnoses are relatively harmless because most patients don't have serious or life-threatening conditions. However, around 800,000 U.S. citizens die or become permanently disabled annually because of a misdiagnosis. While that number is alarming, the researchers also offered cause for hope. Just 5 conditions, stroke, sepsis, pneumonia, blood clots, and lung cancer, account for nearly 40% of those 800,000 cases. Therefore, finding ways to reduce misdiagnoses on just those 5 conditions would have enormous benefits for patients and the healthcare system alike. An unexpected problem. Patients don't believe the diagnosis. Hoffman adds that one major challenge in treating mind-body disorders is getting the patient to accept their diagnosis. This is because, like many doctors, patients usually believe that pain must be the result of a problem with the body. Not only does this seem logical, how could they be in pain if nothing is wrong? That lesson gets constantly reinforced by the world at large. For instance, many people spend their lives treating headaches with painkillers, minor injuries with rest and ice, and so on. As a result, they learn from a young age to treat only physical causes of pain, and are never taught that their minds can produce similar symptoms. Overcoming that programming so the patient can recover from a psychosomatic disorder is difficult, often impossible. Hoffman says that many people reject the idea that pain can exist without a physiological cause, and therefore they never repair the connection between their mind and their body. Change your beliefs through questioning. In Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins writes that you can start to change your beliefs by asking yourself clear, specific questions and then answering them. Robbins says you should start by choosing one specific belief to examine. So, if you're the type of patient we discussed above, you believe pain must have a physiological cause. With that in mind, begin asking yourself questions about that belief, such as, where did I learn this belief? Who or what taught you that pain must come from the body and never from the mind? Is that a reliable source for medical information? Do I know anything that conflicts with this belief? Have you heard stories about people suffering from pain with no medical cause? Do you have any knowledge of biology or psychology that suggests it is possible for the mind alone to cause physical pain? Why am I holding on to this belief? Why is this idea, pain must have a physiological cause, important to you? What would it cost you mentally or emotionally to let go of that idea? If it turns out to be incorrect, how much would letting go of that belief benefit you? If it turns out to be right after all, how much would letting go of that belief harm you? It's a difficult and often uncomfortable process, but by asking questions like these and answering them honestly, you can start to deconstruct your harmful and unwanted beliefs. In this case, breaking down your belief that your pain can't be psychosomatic would allow you to start recovering from it.